Talk about sine law. Specifically, we're going to talk about the missing sides case of sine law. Okay, better triangle here. So sine law is used to solve pretty much any triangle as long as you have the correct information to start with. Okay, so as long as you're given two pairs, which we'll talk about in a little bit, you can solve for pretty much any side or angle on the triangle as long as you have the right information. Okay, so this is a little bit of a review if you watch the other sine law video, but a triangle that we talk about will usually be labeled A, B, and C. You would labeled any sequential letters here, A, B, C, X, Y, Z, whatever works, but just because of convention, we like to use continuous strings of letters, so beside each other in the alphabet. That's just because it's easier to understand that when we're talking about triangle A, B, C, we know that they're connected. Okay, but that covers our angles, angle big A, angle big B, angle big C, but it doesn't cover our sides. So what we do with these angles is we find their pairs. So the angles are paired with a side that is opposite from them. In other words, if we draw a line across like that, that is the opposite side. So we make that the pair by making it lowercase letters. So big A is paired to little a. Big B is paired to little b, and big C to little c. Right? So those are our pairs. Okay? So when we talk about the sine law in this missing side case, our formula looks like this. Little a over the sine of big A, that ratio is equal to little b over the sine of b, big B rather, which is also equal to c over the sine of big C. Okay, so what this really means is that the ratio between the side and the sine of the angles, so this pair, that ratio, is the same for every single pair in the triangle. All of these are equal. Okay, and because they're equal, we have an equality. We can solve for a side given that we have these three other pieces of information. So given we have another side and its angle, and we have this side's angle, then we can solve for that side. Okay, we'll go through an example where that will make a little bit more sense. But for now, let's go through the steps of how to solve this kind of problem. Again, this will make a lot more sense once we do the example. This is mostly here for you to come back and reference later if you need to, just so that there's a list you can look at. Okay, so let's take a look here. The first one, the one you should do with every trig problem you ever do, is to label your triangle, okay? So by that I mean exactly what we did on the left-hand side here. So labeling it with, usually you'll be given the angles here, A, B, and C, and you're labeling the sides so that we know which one we're talking about when we ask for side A, side B, or side C. Okay, so after labeling your triangle, step 2 here is to find your pairs. So find the pairs that you'll use. Okay, so there's two pairs you have to find. The first pair is your incomplete pair. Okay, so your incomplete pair is the pair that contains the angle that you're solving, or rather the side that you're solving for. So let's say A and its pairs, so big A. So if we were solving for side A, then our incomplete pair would be A and big A, which would be this part of the formula here, A and big A. Okay, we'll talk about that again in a minute, but then we also need the complete pair. Okay, so the complete pair is, let's say we had the angle for B and the side length of little b. Okay, if you have both in a pair, then that is a complete pair, and we'll need one of those along with the incomplete pair to make an equality that we can solve. Okay, once we have that equality, we just plug in our values, right? So we'll go over that when we do the example. Then we isolate the unknown. Again, we will go over that. And then finally, simply solve it on your calculator. Okay, so steps 1 through 5, so long as we can follow them, these questions become simple. Okay, so let's set up an example here. Okay, so let's say we have a triangle like this one. Now we have a little bit of information about it. We know that this side down here, we know that this side is going to be 29. Okay, that's that side length. We know that this angle over here is going to be 68 degrees. And let's say that we also know this angle is 18 degrees. Okay, so given that information, let's go ahead and try to find AB. Okay, so first things first, what's AB? We have A, we have B. When you're given a line in this form, all it means is going from point A to point B. We just draw that line. I like to mark the line I'm looking for just because it makes it very obvious whenever I'm glancing at a problem later on that, yep, this is the question that I wanted, this is the answer I wanted, and this is how it happened. Okay, but now that that's done, we look and we try to set it up. So we first, step one, we label our sides. Okay, so we have our big A looking across, that's our little a. Big B, look across, that's our little b. And big C, look across, that's our little c. Okay, so next we find our pairs. Okay, so incomplete pair, we are looking for AB, and it looks like this side is little c, which means that we're going to use the incomplete pair of c over sine of big C. Okay, now we need a complete pair, and here's where we run into a problem. As we look at B, we've got the angle, we don't have the side. We look at A, we've got the side, but not the angle. Well, that's a little bit of a problem, but we do have two angles. And we know a little bit about triangles. We know that if we add up all the interior angles of a triangle, you should get 180 degrees. So if you need the last angle in a triangle because you have the other two, then you know that whatever you add to these two must equal 180, or in the reverse, if you take 180 and you remove what you already have, then whatever's left over must be the last angle. So in this case, that's 94 degrees. Okay, so just a little extra step here. You don't always have to do that one, depends on what you're given, but that's a very common step you might have to do. Okay, but now we look at it again. A is now a complete pair since we have the angle and the side, so we'll use A over sine of A. Okay, from here it's a pretty standard sine law question. We fill in all the things that we know. So starting here, we don't know C, so we'll leave C just as it is. And that's over sine of big C, or sine of 18 degrees. And that is equal to little a, which we know is 29, divided by the sine of big A, or 94, the angle that we found. Okay, we've plugged in the values. Now it's time to isolate the variable. So we want to get this C on its own. We want to isolate it. Okay, so we have this divided by sine of 18, so we got to get rid of that. To get rid of something in math, we do its opposite. So we have a divide by sine 18, so we must do the opposite 8 times. And then we just times by the thing we want to get rid of. So we're going to multiply by sine 18. Notice that we're not multiplying by sine, we're not multiplying by 18, we're multiplying by sine 18 because sine 18 is a number in and of itself. We could solve it to a number. Okay, we do that so that these two cancel. And then of course whatever we do on one side we must do on the other because math is fair. So sine of 18 degrees over there. So if I were to rewrite it just for clarity's sake, we get C equals 29 times the sine of 18 degrees divided by the sine of 94. Okay, so now we solve. This is what the next step says. So all we do is we start punching things into calculators. We'll do the sines first. So we have 29 times the sine of 18, which if you do that on a calculator, you get 0.3090. I'm rounding to 4 decimal places here. And that'll be over the sine of 94, which is 0.9976. Okay. And remember, if you're not remembering how to do sine on a calculator, usually it's just entering the angle and then just pressing the sine key and making sure that your calculator is in degree mode. Okay, last step here, we multiply the top and then divide by the bottom, which will give us our final answer here, c equals 9.0. Okay, that is our final answer there. So we went from having just a couple angles on one of the sides to solving for this side over here by solving for this angle over here. There's only one piece of information we don't have here, and we could solve for that one if we wanted to, using this powerful tool. Okay, so that's how we use sine law to find a missing side.